Good evening. Welcome to the Bible Hour. Come on in. We have 5 minutes until we start reading the Word of the Lord. Four people here. Welcome on board. We are in 1 Samuel. Good evening, Chris Williams, first in chat. Hello, Diane Robbins. Welcome on board. Good day, Phil Tynan. Yes, good day, good day. We are on the Samuel train. Nick's here with Sue, a double Park End admin team tonight, man and wife. Nick, arguably the best Park End admin. A case can be made for it. I've heard it being made. It was credible. Glad to see you have found more hair gel, Owen. Welcome, Hull George. Here's a little tip. I have not put hair gel on my head since I was about 17 years old. What you see before you is a mix of me having a hat on all day and then trying to get some water to make the little ends go forward instead of backwards. Hello, Patty Bois. Good evening, Neil Whitterton, and possibly and probably Sam. Good evening, Cara. My wife told me the text messages you sent her yesterday, should I refer to her as assistant today, and the path of action that you suggest that she takes, which was something quite similar to what we were reading in Judges, if I remember. Neil Winton, I don't do anything without her. Wow. Hev and I are pumped for another Bible hour. Just finished yesterday's. Yeah. We're out of the books of Moses, so we're all floundering a bit, but we're managing just to stay afloat. I think the most complicated book in the Bible is Isaiah. I'm back with the Zoom. So, Park End admin, if my mic cackles tonight, I'm just going to disconnect it and I'm going to plug in another one. And we'll roll with it. Because I've had enough of this cackling mic. Good evening, Sue Roberts. So, admin, it's on you to let me know. Were Ruth and Samuel next to each other early or put together later? Good question. Good question. The ordering of the very early Old Testament canon. Yeah, but I'm talking about an immediate improvement during this reading if it goes Pete Tong and crackly. I don't know. Stay there, Hull George. me just... We are in 1 Samuel in the Bible Hour. So, Howell George, you did break the Bible Hour. So I think the earliest ones went Ruth, 1 Kingdoms, 2 Kingdoms, 3 Kingdoms, 4 Kingdoms, which has now been divided into 1 and 2 Samuel and 1 and 2 Kings. Is what I think. But I might be wrong. Certainly that's how the Septuagint is ordered. All right, welcome to Bible Hour. We are in 1 Samuel and we're at the end of chapter 3. We always ask, what do we learn about Jesus? E. MacDonald, what do we learn about church? We're not going on tangents so much in this Bible Hour. They do crop up, but we don't dwell there. Sometimes we go into it on Facebook a bit, like the daughters of Jephthah, or genocide, or ethnicity. But these are the questions which set human beings' hearts aflame. These are the questions that the Bible wants us to ask of the Bible. So we're at 1 Samuel 3, heading into 4. So let's just finish off 1 Samuel 3 and like halfway through verse 8, I think we got. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Then Eli realized it was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, "Go and lie down again. And if someone calls again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back to bed. And the Lord came and called as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel replied, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "I am about to do a shocking thing in Israel. I am going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family from beginning to end. I have warned him that judgment is coming upon his family forever because his sons are blaspheming God and he hasn't disciplined them. So I have vowed that the sins of Eli and his sons will never be forgiven by sacrifices or offerings." That blasphemy thing we looked at during the 10 Commandments, the blasphemy, the word isn't so much the problem with blasphemy. When you look into the word blasphemy, isn't so much saying the word, like you hear so often now, taking the Lord's name in vain like that. It was to render the subject meaningless, to pierce the person and to render it meaningless. So when you see a blasphemer in the Bible, it's not like they've just let a swear word slip out. They are actively living as if the living God is nothing. Samuel speaks for the Lord. Samuel stayed in bed until morning, then got up and opened the doors of the tabernacle as usual. He was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said to him. But Eli called out to him, "Samuel, my son." "Here I am," Samuel replied. "What did the Lord say to you? Tell me everything, and may God strike you and even kill you if you hide anything from me." So Samuel told Eli everything. He didn't hold anything back. "It is the Lord's will," Eli replied. "Let him do what he thinks best." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said proved to be reliable. And all Israel, from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and gave messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. And Samuel's words went out to all the people of Israel. As we've seen that Lord appear so much, and it's more often than not the angel of the Lord, second person of the Trinity, the Son of God. We got no reason to not think that he's still in flesh appearing and leading his prophets. So we've now come to Samuel chapter 4. So Samuel chapter 4 to 7, as you know, it's like a long account of the Ark of the Covenant in Israel. Why? Well, the Ark, of course, as we know, Bible Hour, was the throne on which the Lord sat on. But the problems now is, as we keep seeing, it's just they no longer value him as king. We've seen that. So the Ark has sort of lost its proper meaning, the esteem of Jesus. And now it's just like a magical totem whilst they're being disobedient. And actually, I think what we're going to see is even the Philistines have a greater esteem of the throne of Jesus than the church itself. And I always wonder as I read these chapters through to chapter 8, like, don't use God as a lucky charm or a spiritual cigarette to calm your nerves and then you never speak to him again for 20 years or something. 1 Samuel chapter 4. The Philistines capture the ark. At that time, Israel was at war with the Philistines. The Israelite army was camped near Ebenezer, and the Philistines were at Aphek. The Philistines attacked and defeated the army of Israel, killing 4,000 men. After the battle was over, the troops retreated to their camp, and the elders of Israel asked, "Why did the Lord allow us to be defeated by the Philistines?" Then they said, "Let's bring the Ark of the Covenant to the Lord from Shiloh. If we carry it into battle with us, it will save us from our enemies." So they sent men to Shiloh to bring the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of Heaven's armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, were also there with the Ark of the Covenant of God. Well, we know about them, don't we? When all the Israelites saw the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord coming into the camp, their shout of joy was so loud it made the ground shake. "What is going on?" the Philistines asked. "What's all the shouting about in the Hebrew camp?" When they were told it was because the Ark of the Lord had arrived, they panicked. "The gods have come into their camp," they cried. "This is a disaster. We have never had to face anything like this before. Help! Who can save us from these mighty gods of Israel? They are the same gods who destroyed the Egyptians with plagues when Israel was in the wilderness. Fight as never before, Philistines. If you don't, we will become the Hebrew slaves just as they have been ours. Stand up and like men and fight." So the Philistines fought desperately, and Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was great. 30,000 Israelite soldiers died that day. The survivors turned and fled to their tents. The Ark of God was captured, and Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were killed. Bible Hour, who have come through Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua, like, it's been what? Yep. Heaven on earth is currently without Jesus in it. The death of Eli. A man from the tribe of Benjamin ran from the battlefield and arrived at Shiloh later that same day. He had torn his clothes and put dust on his head to show his grief. Eli was waiting beside the road to hear the news of the battle, for his heart trembled for the safety of the Ark of God. When the messenger arrived and told what had happened, an outcry resounded throughout the town. "What is all the noise about?" Eli asked. The messengers rushed over to Eli, who was 90 years old and blind. 98 years old and blind. He said to Eli, "I have just come from the battlefield. I was there this very day." "What happened, my son?" Eli demanded. "Israel has been defeated by the Philistines," the messenger replied. "The people have been slaughtered, and your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were also killed, and the ark of God has been captured." When the messenger mentioned what had happened to the ark of God, Eli fell backward from his seat beside the gate. He broke his neck and died, for he was old and overweight. That's the glory term that we learned about yesterday in the original. Well, if you read it in the Hebrew, is the thing that defined him now in his old age was his weight. There was not much more to him. He had been Israel's judge for 40 years. Eli's daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, was pregnant and near her time of delivery. When she heard that the ark of God had been captured and that her father-in-law and husband were dead, she went into labor and gave birth. She died in childbirth, but before she passed away, the midwives tried to encourage her. "Don't be afraid," they said. "You have a baby boy." But she did not answer or pay attention to them. She named the child Ichabod, which means the glory has departed. Or in this version, it says, "Where is the glory?" For she said, "Israel's glory is gone." She named him this because the ark of God had been captured and because her father-in-law and her husband were dead. Then she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." This is difficult stuff to read, isn't it, Bible Hour? One Samuel chapter 5, the ark in Philistia. Hello, North Star. After the Philistines captured the ark of God, they took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. They carried the ark of God into the temple of Dagon and placed it beside an idol of Dagon. With all due respect to Dagon, he's got to be one of the most rubbish of fake demonic gods. He's just like in charge of fish or something. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, Dagon had fallen with his face to the ground in front of the ark of the Lord. So they took Dagon and put him in his place again. But the next morning, the same thing happened. Dagon had fallen face down before the ark of the Lord again. This time his head and hands had broken off and were lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. Jesus is just gradually decapitating all the fake gods, isn't he? That is why to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor anyone who enters the temple of Dagon in Ashdod will step on its threshold. Did I miss a bit then? No, I didn't. Verse 6. Then the Lord's heavy hand struck the people of Ashdod and the nearby villages with a plague of tumors. When the people realized what was happening, they cried out, "We can't keep the ark of the God of Israel here any longer. He is against us. We will all be destroyed along with Dagon, our God." I do think they've got a higher view of the throne of Jesus at the moment than the church. So they called together the rulers of the Philistine towns and asked, "What should we do with the ark of the God of Israel?" The rulers discussed it and replied, "Move it to the town of Gath." So they moved the ark of God of Israel to Gath. But when the ark arrived at Gath, the Lord's heavy hand fell on its men, young and old. He struck them with a plague of tumors, and there was great panic. So they sent the ark of God to the town of Ekron. But when the people of Ekron saw it coming, they cried out, "They are bringing the ark of God of Israel here to kill us too." The people summoned the Philistine rulers again and begged them, "Please send the ark of the God of Israel back to its own country, or it will kill us all. For the deadly plague from God has already begun, and great fear was sweeping across the town. Those who didn't die were afflicted with tumors, and the cry from the town rose to heaven." There you go. Non-Christian prayers being answered, or heard at least. It's mad, isn't it? Do you remember the lengths that the Lord told Joshua and Moses to go to not sort of mingle with the old life of Egypt or the future pagan gods there? Don't even put different plants in the same field. If you wear clothes, keep it the same material. Wine skins, just keep it the same. And now they've taken the ark into the other territory. Sue Roberts, COVID. Yeah, what had struck them all, I see you. Maybe. 1 Samuel chapter 6. The Philistines return the ark. The ark of the Lord remained in Philistine territory 7 months in all. Then the Philistines called in their priests and diviners and asked them, "What should we do about the ark of the Lord? Tell us how to return it to its own country." "Send the ark of God of Israel back with a gift," they were told. "Send a guilt offering so the plague will stop. Then, if you are healed, you will know it was his hand that caused the plague." "What sort of guilt offering should we send?" they said. And they were told, "Since the plague has struck both you and your 5 rulers, make 5 gold tumors, and 5 gold rats, just like those that have ravished your land. Make these things to show honor to the God of Israel. Perhaps then he will stop afflicting you, your gods, and your land. Don't be stubborn and rebellious as Pharaoh and the Egyptians were. By the time God was finished with them, they were eager to let Israel go. Now build a new cart and find 2 cows that have just given birth to calves. Make sure the cows have never been yoked to a cart. Hitch the cows to the cart, but shut their calves away from them in a pen. Put the ark of God on the cart, and beside it place a chest containing the gold rats and tumors you are sending as a guilt offering. Then let the cows go wherever they want. If they cross the border of our land and go to Beth Shemesh, we will know it was the Lord who brought this great disaster upon us. If they don't, we will know it was not his hand that caused the plague. It came simply by chance." So these instructions were carried out. 2 cows were hitched to the cart, and their newborn calves were shut up in a pen. Then the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rats and gold tumors were placed on the cart, and sure enough, without veering off in other directions, the cows went straight along the road toward Beth Shemesh. Hey, hello, Sam Whittington. Towards Beth Shemesh, lowing as they went. The Philistine rulers followed them as far as the border of Beth Shemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh were harvesting wheat in the valley, and when they saw the ark, they were overjoyed. The cart came into the field of a man named Yeshua and stopped beside a large rock. Of course it did. Of course it went there. So the people broke up the wood of the cart for fire and killed the cows and sacrificed them to the Lord as a burnt offering. Several men of the tribe of Levi lifted the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rats and gold tumors from the cart and placed them on a large rock. Many sacrifices and burnt offerings were offered to the Lord that day by the people of Beth Shemesh. The 5 Philistine rulers watched all this and then returned to Ekron the same day. The 5 gold tumors sent by the Philistines as a guilt offering to the Lord were gifts from the rulers of Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The 5 gold rats represented the 5 Philistine towns and their surrounding villages, which were controlled by the 5 rulers. The large rock at Beth Shemesh, where they set the ark of the Lord, still stands in the field of Yeshua as a witness to what happened there, obviously. The ark moved to Kiriath Jearim, but the Lord killed 70 men from Beth Shemeth because they looked into the ark of the Lord. And the people mourned greatly because of what the Lord had done. Who is able to stand in the presence of the Lord, this holy God? They cried out. Where can we send the ark from here? So they sent messengers to the people at Kiriath Jearim and told them, the Philistines have returned the ark of the Lord. Come here and get it. You can't just go swanning in, peering into the secret things of God. Not without the middleman. 1 Samuel 7. Welcome on in if you're new to the Bible Hour. We are reading from the New Living Translation. So the men of Kiriath Jearim came to get the ark of the Lord. They took it to the hillside home of Abinadab and ordered Eleazar his son to be in charge of it. The ark remained in Kiriath Jearim for a long time, 20 years in all. During that time, all Israel mourned because it seemed the Lord had abandoned them. Samuel leads Israel to victory. Then Samuel said to all the people of Israel, if you want to return to the Lord with all of your hearts, get rid of your foreign gods and your images of Ashtoreth. Turn your hearts to the Lord and obey him alone. Do you meet people like that? What's God ever done for me for the past 20 years? He's been completely silent as I've been going home and worshipping my own little Ashtaroth god and spending all my life dedicated to that god. My little Asherah pole in my bedroom. Or whatever a god may be. So the Israelites got rid of their images of Baal and Ashtaroth and worshipped only the Lord. Then Samuel told them, gather all of Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered at Mizpah and in a great ceremony drew water from a well and poured it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day and confessed that they had sinned against the Lord. It was at Mizpah that Samuel became Israel's judge. All good prayer meetings have confession of sin in, don't they? We know that. When the Philistine rulers heard that Israel had gathered at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. North Star, I am meeting a lot of young women who are into goddess worship in different forms in the last few years. Perhaps give them a tract of Leviticus and Samuel. When the Philistine rulers, they mobilized their armies and advanced. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Don't stop pleading with the Lord our God to save us from the Philistines, they begged Samuel. So Samuel took a young lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering. He pleaded with the Lord to help Israel, and the Lord answered him. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived to attack Israel. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven that day, and the Philistines were thrown into such confusion that the Israelites defeated them. The men of Israel chased them from Mizpah to a place below Beth-kar, slaughtering them all along the way. Samuel then took a large stone and placed it between the towns of Mizpah and Jeshanah. He named it Ebenezer, which means the stone of help, for he said, "Hitherto the Lord hath protected us," or up to this point, the Lord has helped us. Or isn't it, "Hither by thy help I've come. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I've come. And I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Teach me some melodious sonnet sung by flaming tongues above. I don't know the rest, I've forgotten it. So the Philistines were subdued and didn't invade Israel again for some time. And throughout Samuel's lifetime, the Lord's powerful hand was raised against the Philistines. The Israelite villages near Ekron and Gath that the Philistines had captured were restored to Israel, along with the rest of the territory that the Philistines had taken. And there was peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the rest of his life. Each year he traveled around, setting up his court first at Bethel, then at Gilgal, and then Mizpah. He judged the people of Israel at each of these places. Then he would return to his home at Ramah, and he would hear cases there too. And Samuel built an altar to the Lord at Ramah. And remember, the Lord promised, didn't he, at the start of Judges, that he would be with each and every judge personally. MacDonald, I have met a man of God who prays for confusion in the camp of the enemy. We are at the halfway point. Feel free to go and grab a drink, maybe some food, a banana, a tangerine, and we'll gather back here in 30 seconds for Samuel chapter 8. Lovely voice. Hope you're in Park End's choir, Chris Henry. There is no such choir anymore, Chris Henry. The times they are a-changing. Take my heart, Lord, take and seal it from thy courts above. That's the end it. Sam Whittington, we have gin. Okay. Ask your mum about it, Chris Henry. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 8, basically 8, 9, and 10. It's just, I don't think it's good. Church is a monarchy under the leadership of King Jesus. His way, his rule, his word goes. And now the church just wants to be like other nations, pathetic pagan nations. And it's basically treachery, I think, for them to ask for a human king instead of having God's divine human king rule over them, the Lord Jesus. So I do think the very existence of a king over the ancient church was a denial of the leadership of Jesus, the theocracy there. Yeah. It's like, and he spells it out for them, and they're like, "No, we want one anyway. It's crackers, but we do the same sort of thing every day, don't we? Bible hour. We know your way is right, Lord, but we'll just do this bit anyway, the way we think." Okay, let us jump in. 1 Samuel 8. Israel requests a king. As Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel, Joel and Abijah. Yeah, Abijah. Abijah was the most popular name of boys in the ancient church, and it meant the Lord my Father. Probably Abijah, wasn't it? His oldest sons held court in Beersheba, but they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. Finally, all the elders of Israel met at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. Abba, Father. Yeah. Look, they told him, you are now old and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us like all the other nations have. Samuel was displeased with their request and went to the Lord for guidance. Do everything they say to you, the Lord replied, for they are rejecting me, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, they have continually abandoned me and followed other gods. And now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but solemnly warn them about the way a king will reign over them. Bible, I was like, we knew this was happening because that's in Deuteronomy chapter 17. They aren't you? You're thinking that when it's all about only have one horse or one wife and make sure you have a copy of the Bible. Samuel warns against the kingdom. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and charioteers, making them run before his chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his army. Some will be forced to plow his fields and harvest his crops. And some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will have 1/10 of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand 1/10 of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from this king you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said. Or rather, it should be this. Even so, we still want the king, they said, because they're being dull. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into battle. I mean, if Jesus is still at Gilgal in his little army base that he's been running operations from, that is heartbreaking stuff, isn't it? Sin literally breaks the heart of the Lord. So Samuel repeated to the Lord what the people said, and the Lord replied, do as they say, and give them a king. Then Samuel agreed and sent the people home. One Samuel chapter 9. Saul meets Samuel. There was a wealthy, influential man named Kish from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abiel, son of Zeror, son of Bechorath, son of Aphiah, of the tribe of Benjamin. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. One day, Kish's donkeys strayed away, and he told Saul, "Take a servant with you and go look for the donkeys." So Saul took one of the servants and traveled through the hill country of Ephraim, the land of Shalisha, the Shalaim area, and the entire land of Benjamin, but they couldn't find the donkeys anywhere. Finally, they entered the region of Zuph, and Saul said to his servant, "Let's go home. By now my father will be more worried about us than about the donkeys." But the servant said, "I've just thought of something. There is a man of God who lives here in this town. He is held in high honor by all the people because everything he says comes true. Let's go and find him. Perhaps he can tell us which way to go." "But we don't have anything to offer him," Saul replied. "Even our food is gone, and we don't have a thing to give him." "Well," the servant said, "I have one small silver piece. We can at least offer it to the man of God and see what happens." In those days, if people wanted a message from God, they would say, "Let's go and ask the seer," for the prophets used to be called seers. "All right," Saul argued, "let's try it." So they started into the town where the man of God lived. As they were climbing the hill to the town, they met a young woman coming out to draw water. So Saul and his servant asked, "Is the seer here today?" "Yes," they replied. "Stay right on this road. He is at the town gates. He has just arrived to take part in a public sacrifice up at the place of worship. Hurry and catch him before he goes up there to eat. The guests won't begin eating until he arrives to bless the food." So they entered the town, and as they passed through the gates, Samuel was coming out toward them to go up to the place of worship. Now, the Lord had told Samuel the previous day, "About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him to be the leader of my people, Israel. He will rescue them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on my people in mercy and have heard their cry." So just to say here, some good kings are the Lord's anointed kings. Some governments today are the Lord's anointed governments. Some bad kings in the Bible are the Lord's anointed kings. And David even treats Saul with respect in his funeral because he was the Lord's anointed. Do you remember that? And some bad governments which are in existence today are the Lord's anointed government, appointed by him to serve a purpose. Now, I'm hesitant to say all rulers everywhere in the Bible and now are the Lord's anointed king, because there's a verse coming up in one of the minor prophets that say they did not consult the Lord for this king, which makes me think, well, the Lord is sovereign over all appointments. There are just some outright that he does not want there. Anyway, all of that to say, pray for your governments, like Timothy tells us to. 17. When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said, "That's the man I told you about. He will rule my people." Just then Saul approached Samuel at the gateway and asked, "Can you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "I get that all the time. Thanks for turning up at my house, but could you go and get the minister, please? Because you look like a complete twonk. There is no way you're a minister." It happened all the time. When I was dealing with like spiritualism and demon stuff in the last valley, I would turn up at the door and I could visibly see people's hearts dropped as they were expecting some man with proper minister's hair and a proper beard and a long black coat and a massive Latin Bible. And there's me like, all right. "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up to the place of worship ahead of me. We will eat there together, and in the morning I'll tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, for they have been found. And I am here to tell you that you and your family are the focus of all Israel's hopes," which used to be Jesus. Saul replied, "But I'm only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking like this to me? Sue Roberts, we can buy you a massive Latin Bible if it helps. I prefer Greek, and I've got one. Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them above the 30 special guests. Samuel then instructed the cook to bring Saul the finest cut of meat, the piece that had been set aside for the guest of honor. So the cook brought in the meat and placed it before Saul. Go ahead and eat it, Samuel said. I was saving it for you even before I invited these others. So Saul ate with Samuel that day. When they came down from the place of worship and returned to town, Samuel took Saul up to the roof of the house and prepared a bed for him there. At daybreak the next morning, Samuel called to Saul, "Get up, it's time you were on your way." So Saul got ready, and Samuel left the house, and he and Samuel, left the house together. When they reached the edge of the town, Samuel told Saul to send his servant on ahead. After the servant was gone, Samuel said, "Stay here, for I have received a special message for you from God." Yeah, I got a funeral coat, thanks. 1 Samuel chapter 10. Samuel anoints Saul as king. Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it over Saul's head. The Christ, the anointed king. He kissed Saul and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be ruler over Israel, his special possession. When you leave me today, you will see 2 men besides Rachel's tomb at Zelzah, on the border of Benjamin. They will tell you that the donkeys have been found and that your father has stopped worrying about them and is now worried about you. He is asking, 'Have you seen my son?' When you get to the oak of Tabor, you will see 3 men coming toward you who are on the way to worship God at Bethel. One will be bringing 3 young goats, another will have 3 loaves of bread, and the third will be carrying a wineskin full of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 of the loaves which you are to accept. When you arrive at Gibeah of God, where the garrison of the Philistines is located, you will meet a band of prophets coming down from the place of worship. They will be playing a harp, a tambourine, and a lyre, and they will be prophesying. At that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them. You will be changed into a different person. After these signs take place, do what must be done, for God is with you. Then go down to Gilgal ahead of me. I will join you there to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. You must wait for 7 days until I arrive and give you further instructions. It's interesting that some modern churches think, "Oh no, we better not have music in church because that will replace the work of the Spirit." But we can sit before meetings start and read hymns to fire us up, get us engaged. Don't have music, but do have words. And it's quite difficult once you've got a spectrum of that the Lord can move and fire people up using aesthetic things. It's then hard to say, well, it can't be one form of art, but it can be another. Ideally, you want truth to be there. Well, always you want truth to be there, but truth doesn't just come in words, does it? There's one other thing I want to say on the Spirit, because I know some people are asking it. I think it's quite clear in the Bible that all the way through both testaments, in order to become part of the family of God, to be regenerate inside and saved and changed and redeemed and justified and all that stuff, you need the Spirit of God dwelling in you. So I don't want people in the Bible out to think, oh, the Spirit dwelling in people is just a New Testament thing. And a prime example of that is, I think, Saul and David, because we all know Saul at the end sort of botches it and probably is in hell, probably. But David is in heaven. We know that. But actually, David did probably tons more worse stuff in his life than Saul did. But yet, say David is kept and Saul is not. And it's just clear things like that, where the indwelling, holding power, the regenerating work, the washing of the Spirit is quite clear in complete wretches like even David. It's the only explanation how some are kept and some aren't. Some have the Spirit of God dwelling in him. All that to say, then on top of that, the Spirit comes on people and equips them for certain works like kingship, priesthood, craft making, tabernacle construction, art, dancing, tambourines. So there's quite a deep theological study in that, and that was a nutshell of it. But it's a particular thing of mine I think it's just clearly taught that the indwelling work of the Spirit is not a privilege of the New Testament church alone. Otherwise, you've got Old Testament church, our ancient church, who somehow made it to heaven without the indwelling, regenerating, and keeping work of the Holy Spirit, which is a different gospel, because you can't get to know Jesus without the work of the Spirit, as the tabernacle clearly shows with the light shining on the bread. You must wait for 7 days until I arrive and give you further instructions. Samuel's signs are fulfilled. As Saul turned and started to leave, God gave him a new heart, and all Samuel's signs were fulfilled that day. When Saul and his servant arrived at Gibeah, they saw a group of prophets coming toward them. Petit bois, didn't think of it that way. Yeah. One more thing, because it is really important, the work of the Spirit. You get this like Psalms like 51, where David is crying out, please don't take your Spirit from me. It's not like he's saying, oh no, I might lose the Spirit inside me now. We know that the Lord keeps his church. Once he's got them, he keeps them. None shall pluck us from his hand. So he's not worried about like that slipping out of the hands of God. He's basically praying there what every church should be praying, and a lot do in their weekly prayer meetings. Lord, fill us with your Spirit, even more spiritual power. Don't let it go. Don't go from us. Do you see the difference? We're not saying, oh no, our salvation is quickly going to be lost. And neither were they praying that in the Old Testament, when they're saying things like, take not thy Spirit from us. It's the same like revive us type prayers that's happening there. All right, I will shut up now. I'm just going to read now solidly for the next 10 minutes, I promise. Verse 10. When Saul and his servant arrived at Gibeah, they saw a group of prophets coming toward them. Then the Spirit of God came powerfully upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy. When those who knew Saul heard about it, they exclaimed, what? Is even Saul a prophet? How did the son of Kish become a prophet? And one of those standing there said, can anyone become a prophet, no matter who his father is? So that is the origin of the saying, is even a Saul a prophet? When Saul had finished prophesying, he went up to the place of worship. Where have you been? Saul's uncle asked him and his servant. We were looking for the donkeys, Saul replied, but we couldn't find them. So we went to Samuel and asked him where they were. Oh, and what did he say? His uncle asked. He told us that the donkeys had already been found, Saul replied. But Saul didn't tell us, his uncle. Sorry, but Saul didn't tell his uncle what Samuel said about the kingdom. North Star, I love your digressions. Well, because you said that, there is just one more thing, because it's massively linked also to your style of worship in church. Because quite a few churches who have little to no musical assistance argue it that there was tons of music in the Old Testament, in the temple worship and timbrels and choirs and drums and all that stuff, because there was no indwelling work of the Spirit. So there was this other sort of stuff in his place. But now in the New Testament, we have the Word, and all glories on the Word. So we don't need that other stuff to sort of fire our spirits up. We've got post-Pentecostal work of the Spirit, and basically large amounts of the worship wars hang on the pneumatological arguments, the work of the Spirit, rooted, I think, in a bad understanding of regeneration in the Old Testament. You can have both, and the ancient church often did. Grand music, glorifying grand truth. Right, I promise that's it. I promise now. Verse 17. Later, Samuel called all the people of Israel to meet before the Lord at Mizpah, and he said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, has declared. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all the nations that were oppressing you. But though I have rescued you from your misery and distress, you have rejected your God today and have said, 'No, we want a king instead.' Now, therefore, present yourselves before the Lord by tribes and clans." There's the Lord saying, present yourself before the Lord. So Samuel brought all the tribes of Israel before the Lord, and the tribe of Benjamin was chosen by lot. Then he brought each family of the tribe of Benjamin before the Lord, and the family of the Matrites were chosen. And finally, Saul, son of Kish, was chosen from among them. But when they looked for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, "Where is he?" And the Lord replied, "Oh, he's hiding among the baggage." So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anybody else. Then Samuel said to all the people, "This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. No one in Israel is like him." And all the people shouted, "Long live the king." I don't like it. I don't like it. Then Samuel told the people what the rights and duties of a king were. He wrote them down on a scroll and placed it before the Lord. Then Samuel sent the people home again. When Saul returned to his home at Gibeah, a group of men whose hearts God had touched went with him. But there were some scoundrels who complained, "How can this man save us?" And they scorned him and refused to bring him gifts. But Saul ignored them. Nahash, king of the Ammonites, had been grievously oppressing the people of Gad and Reuben, who lived the east side of the Jordan. He gouged out the right eye of each of the Israelites living there, and he didn't allow anyone to come and rescue them. In fact, of all the Israelites east of the Jordan, there wasn't a single one whose right eye Nahash had not gouged out. But there were 7,000 men who had escaped from the Ammonites, and they had settled in Jabesh Gilead. Verse, we're coming to them, the men of Jabesh Gilead. Let's do it, Sue. 1 Samuel chapter 11. Saul defeats the Ammonites. About a month later, King Nahash of Ammon led his army against the Israelite town of Jabesh Gilead. But all the citizens of Jabesh asked for peace. "Make a treaty with us, and we will be your servants," they pleaded. All right, Nahash said, but only on one condition. I will gouge out the right eye of every one of you as a disgrace to all Israel. Give us 7 days to send messengers throughout Israel, replied the elders of Jabesh. If no one comes to save us, we will agree to your terms. When the messengers came to Gibeah of Saul and told the people about their plight, everyone broke into tears. Saul had been ploughing a field with his oxen, and when he returned to town, he asked, "What's the matter? Why is everyone crying?" So they told him about the message from Jabesh. Then the Spirit of God came powerfully upon Saul, and he became very angry. He took 2 oxen and cut them into pieces and sent the messengers to carry them throughout Israel with this message: "This is what will happen to the oxen of anyone who refuses to follow Saul and Samuel into battle." So there's the Spirit working again in a non-regenerative sense. And the Lord made the people afraid of Saul's anger, and all of them came out together as one. When Saul mobilized them at Bezek, he found that there were 300,000 men from Israel and 30,000 men from Judah. So Saul sent the messengers back to Jabesh Gilead to say, "We will rescue you by noontime tomorrow." There was great joy throughout the town when that message arrived. The men of Jabesh told their enemies, "Tomorrow we will come out to you, and you can do whatever you wish." But before dawn the next morning, Saul arrived, having divided his army into 3 detachments. He launched a surprise attack against the Ammonites and slaughtered them the whole morning. The remnant of their army was so badly scattered that no 2 of them were left together. Then the people exclaimed to Samuel, "Now, where are those men who said, 'Why should Saul rule over us? Bring them here and we will kill them.'" But Saul replied, "No one will be executed today, for the Lord has rescued Israel today." Then Samuel said to the people, "Come, let us go to Gilgal to renew the kingdom." So they all went to Gilgal, and in a solemn ceremony before the Lord, there he is again in Gilgal, they made Saul king. Then they offered peace offerings to the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites were filled with joy. It is 21:59. Let us not begin 1 Samuel 12 at this hour. God willing, tomorrow at 9 p.m. we will be back for 1 Samuel chapter 12, where we learn about the ancient church doing its thing with their replacement king from Jesus. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I trust you will have a Spirit-filled, anointed sleep and day tomorrow, looking to Jesus, our King. This stream tonight was sponsored by Michael Freeman. Good night, one and all.